I could have killed
Okay.
Dan in that moment. These guys were circling us. Couldn't get away.
We have to go.
I had just quit my job at the casino and hated my new job. It didn't pay like it was supposed to, and my boss was a condescending jerk. My roommate of 4 years and I had a falling out. I was crashing in my cousin's room. I couldn't find an affordable place. So when my mom called and said that she was having surgery and really needed me to come manage her shop while she recovered, I jumped on the chance to get out of the city and into the forest of the Oregon coast. I didn't have a ton of money, but I figured my savings and a little help from Mom would get me there. However, every 10-foot U-Haul in the city was reserved or rented. I had to take a 14-footer, which was so much more expensive. Suddenly, the money situation is looking grim. So when an old friend from high school in Oregon called me asking if he could crash on our couch for 2 weeks to check out New Orleans in exchange for paying for gas, food, and hotels for part of the trip, I was super relieved. He wanted to be dropped off at his extended family's place in Texas, just southwest of Dallas, and he could help me drive too. I quickly agreed. He purchased his plane ticket to come down. I called my best friend from Oregon, Katie, and told her how Dan was going to help me to Texas. The three of us and his long-term girlfriend had been really close, so I expected her to be really excited. Instead, I was met with long seconds of silence before she asked me if I knew about his accident. I didn't. Apparently, a few years before, Dan had wrecked his bike while not wearing a helmet. He was in a coma for several months. Katie told me that when he woke up, he was a different person. She said none of our old group would have anything to do with him anymore, but wouldn't really elaborate further. She would only repeat that he was just, quote, different, unquote. I felt a little nervous after this conversation, but the plane ticket was already bought. Disclaimer, when I knew him before, Dan was hands down one of the best people I've ever met. He was genuine, generous, and truly cared about everyone. You could trust him with anything. I realized the way he acted later was at least partially the result of trauma and will try to be respectful of this fact. However, many things he did catapulted over the line of decency. I admit I could have handled this much better. But in order to be honest, I had a lot of trouble finding understanding as his inappropriate behavior escalated. Once he arrived, my cousin and I noticed that he's always slightly out of it, and he doesn't have any filter. Okay, we can deal with that. Then he says he forgot to transfer his money from his savings to his checking, and his bank was giving him trouble about transferring it over the phone. He assured me he would get it straight before we left. Okay. Now, he's the guy on the couch that I am responsible for feeding and covering bar tabs for. I had had plans for goodbye blowouts with friends, but my aunt didn't want him there if I was out. I wasn't missing the chance to see all my people one last time, so I was stuck with him. He promised he would pay me back. Then he started getting more and more handsy with my cousin Natalie and I. We made it very clear this was unwanted and inappropriate. He would walk into our room unannounced, especially at times when we were getting ready and likely to be undressed. We actually had to install a lock because he ignored every demand that he knock and wait for a response. He would stroke our feet as he walked by while we were laid out relaxing on the bed, stand so close we could feel him breathe, touch us every time we walked by, rub on our shoulders and touch our hair. By the time I caught him smelling my hair and secretly taking pictures of our butts while we were walking, I was officially creeped the hell out and working towards furious. I was about to be alone with him in a hotel miles from anyone I knew. I grew increasingly stronger in my reactions to what he was doing, trying to discourage him from his behaviors. He would apologize and then rinse and repeat. 2 weeks later, and we're on our way. Crossing a bridge right before Shreveport, he reached over and slid his hand across my upper thigh. He went for the money, his fingers brushing my lady parts. I swerved, smacked his hand away, and promptly began ripping him a new asshole. Suddenly, the inside of the U-Haul, of course, was filled with red and blue flashing lights. Images of everything I owned being impounded filled my head. Luckily, the officer caught the byplay between us and let me go without a ticket. He cast a significant glance at Dan, who was acting like a total weirdo, wandering around talking to us, himself, who knows, and simply told me, quote, "Good luck," unquote. Yeah, thanks, Shreveport cop. I appreciate your understanding. Once we got to Shreveport, I stopped for gas. Dan had claimed he had the money in his account now, and so I asked him for it. He started freaking out, saying he'd lost his wallet. Funny, I hadn't seen him pull it out once in over 2 weeks, so not sure how he lost it. But fine, I pay for the gas. As I'm climbing back into the truck, I'm 4'11". I really had to boost myself up because I had started to slip. From the odd vantage point this put me in, I could see the top of his wallet crammed in the space between the tall dashboard and the side window. I did not believe him when he told me he didn't put it there on purpose. It was wedged in way too firmly for that nonsense. Back on the road. I am a very introverted person and I treasure calm moments. Dan talked. And talked. And talked. And talked. 4 hours about ridiculousness, mainly how he was great in so many ways, and kept trying, horribly, I might add, to seduce me. I was completely over him. Twice I almost kicked him out, but kept reminding myself that he had suffered severe head trauma and I couldn't leave him alone in the middle of nowhere with no money and still call myself a good person. It became my mantra. At the next gas station, he admitted that his family had never put money into his account. I was now seriously worried that I was going to run out of money before I could get to Oregon. I had been worried about that before I started supporting a grown man for the last several weeks. Now I was approaching frantic. When we stopped at the hotel to sleep, I could only afford 1 room, but made sure there were 2 beds. I'm laying down trying to goose fraba. He gets in the shower. A long shower. But I'm okay with that. At least he's out of my space for a bit. Suddenly the bathroom door, which was a few feet from the side of my bed, flew open. A great cloud of steam billowed out. I have never witnessed so much steam after a shower. I'm still thinking, what the f***? When the steam clears enough for me to see him. He's standing right inside the bathroom door, hands on hips, completely naked. I start stammering, asking what the f*** he's doing, get dressed, etc. He just struts out naked and starts doing a gyrating dance, causing his penis to jump and twirl. Pulling the blankets up protectively and calling my dog to me, I started to feel real fear of this man whom had once been my friend. Once he saw his strip show was not having the desired effect on me, his whole countenance changed. His expression darkened. I saw open anger on his face. He starts screaming and ranting at me about how great he is and how hard he's been trying to show me, but I just don't get it. He's a wonderful man, a perfect man with a perfect penis right here awaiting my pleasure, and I am insisting on being a blind, ignorant bitch. He continues calling me names while simultaneously trying to convince me I'm stupid for not being with him while I have the chance. And he was naked the whole time he was yelling. It took forever to get him calmed down and dressed. I was trying not to show how scared I was. The reality of my situation hit me hard. I was alone in a hotel room far from everyone I knew, with a mentally unstable man, one who felt I somehow owed it to him or myself to have sex with him. I already knew he had no boundaries, so I lay there holding my dog all night, listening to every rustle coming from his side of the room. I was terrified that if I fell asleep, I would wake up to him trying to me. And thank God for my pit bull. I am sure she was a major deterrent. I didn't sleep a wink, and my dog, catching the mood, wouldn't leave my side to eat her dinner or her breakfast. The reasons I didn't leave him there the next morning were, number 1, he would be gone before I had to get another room, and 2, he promised his family would give me some cash when we got there. I needed it desperately, mainly because of him. Last day with him. We're off Main Interstate, heading south. He was allegedly going to help me drive for the trip, but neglected to tell me he didn't have a license. No way that was going down, so I take off on zero sleep and pure nerves. Now, I had wanted to put his drop-off location in my MapQuest itinerary to make it easier for me since I'd never strayed from the main interstate before. However, I was never able to get him to give me the actual address of where I was taking him. He continually assured me that it was easy peasy, no way I could get lost, etc., until I gave up in exasperation. I'm still furious and shaken about the night before, and he immediately got us lost for about an hour and a half. Once we got headed back the right way, I decided to stop before we hit the main road and let Callie, my dog, use the restroom. We stopped in a park area with a playground in some tiny town that I didn't pay attention to the name of. So I'm walking her, having left Dan in the truck with the air on. These 7 guys are walking by adjacent to the park. When they see me, they all stop, talk a second, and almost as one give me the same creepy-ass grin. They turn off the street and walk across the park to the playground area a few hundred feet in front of me. They lean on the equipment in a loose horseshoe, centered on me, still smiling. They didn't say anything or signal to me, only occasionally speaking lowly to each other. They were all dressed the same, ranged from early teens to early 30s, and just generally gave off bad vibes. They were staring me down until I felt like a rabbit that saw a fox. Callie, who usually loves everyone, started trying to drag me back to the truck in the opposite direction of these guys. I trusted her and I followed, trying to act calm and confident. I felt neither. When I got up to the U-Haul, Dan had the back open. I tried to tell him to close it. We need to go now. But he was oblivious to all my distress signals. He kept insisting that we try to feed the dog since she didn't eat her last 2 meals. Okay, but feed her in the truck. We have to go. A quick side glance showed that the men were still by the playground, staring, but now they weren't leaning on the equipment. They were standing close together, talking, and watching us. This is when Fantastic Dan informs me he's lost the car keys. What the Really? I feel a sinking in my stomach and demand that we search right now, quickly. As I scour the ground, I see the men have separated. 2 are in the same place, 2 are circling wide to the right, 2 doing the same on the left. They are all still staring at us, and I've lost track of one. I finally spot him. He must have started circling to the left before the other 2, because he was now almost directly behind the U-Haul, maybe 100 feet back. He was hidden from my sight where I'd just been searching. I was officially losing my grip on myself. A full fight or flight mode was taking over. I knew I had searched every inch of space Dan could have possibly been around. Several times, even running my hands across the ground just in case. These guys were circling us and we couldn't get away. Our phones were locked in the cab. For a minute, time seemed to slow down and I just stared off, thinking how screwed we were. I think all the stress may have overloaded my system for a moment. My eyes strayed to the bag of dog food, the whole reason Dan had gotten out of the cab in the first place. No way. No way. Not possible. But maybe. Time snapped back into regular focus and I practically dove for the dog food bag, cursing and threatening Dan the whole time. Like a maniac, I yanked it up and dumped it all over the back of the U-Haul. And there they were, the keys, shining silver in the wave of brown kibbles. I could have killed Dan in that moment. Twice. But I just slammed and locked the back and got us the hell out of there. The rest of the trip to where I dropped him off is a blur. I know he got us lost again for about 2 hours. I used that time to scream at him, admittedly not my best moment. Eventually, he had me drop him off on some random main street in a little town that looked like all the others. He didn't even tell me it was his destination until he had me pull over. I was angry that he wouldn't take me to his family's to get at least some money for taking care of him, giving him a place to stay, and driving him so far. We had a truly marvelous fight. but I eventually gave up. I was just happy to be rid of him. I was exhausted, but too overstimulated to sleep. So I decided to get a few more hours in to make up for the lost time and get back into familiar territory. My next stop for gas was where the gas station attendant tried to send me to his family enclave in the desert, and Mr. Texas saved my ass. So while I still don't know exactly where that creepy attendant lived, I do know it was south of Dallas, a little to the west, and way out in nothingness. Not off the interstate as I mistakenly assumed before my mom reminded me of my hellish detour with a scary ex-friend. So this is going to wrap up a two-parter, this being the prequel to the prior episode, SO1E03, My Hills Have Eyes moment in Texas. That story upset me. This one upsets me too, albeit for different reasons. It made me angry, and I wanted to go back in time and kick Dan in the for touching OP's lady parts. But then that made me feel terrible because Fantastic Dan is disabled due to a traumatic brain injury. And TBI is serious, and for some, it just will never compute that they've done anything wrong. While Dan's misdeeds were terrible, can and should he still be held to account for those actions? And if so, how? I don't know the right answer. Probably because there isn't one. But how would you handle if you had a Dan come into your life today, exhibiting this bad behavior? Something to think on, and let me know down in the comments. I'd like to take a moment to thank you all for listening. For those of you who are new to the channel, hi, and thanks for coming. And for those returning, welcome back, my new friends, and thanks for checking out the newest Storytime. Please take a moment to help us out in the algorithm by subscribing and hitting that notification bell, and leave a like if you liked it, a dislike if you didn't, and a comment if you can, even if it's just, hi.